up, a Cinema Shogun here, and at the time of this recording, it is Sunday, July 9th, approximately 3:51 p.m. And there are still no charges against Rudy's mom. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Still, not a single charge has been brought against Rudy's mom. And that's wild to think about, right? I mean, even people who've been halfway paying attention to this story could probably list a dozen things that they could lock the mother up for. But no, still no charges. And it's my understanding that as of right now, or up until this point, Rudy's mom has still been telling the lie. She has still been going with the story that Rudy wasn't with her this whole time. Rudy's mom is still using the story that in reality, she just found Rudy. And that all of those other people who were at her house that people think was Rudy, oh, that was my boyfriend, my ex-husband, that was my nephew. Now, you tell me how this makes sense. If Rudy's mother looked the investigators and the police in the eyes and pretended like she just found her son, even though they know, just like we all know, that that's a lie, is that not providing false information to law enforcement? She is still, to this day, things may change, but as of right now, she is still going along with her story that Rudy just came home. Rudy's been gone all of this time. And everyone knows that that is a lie. The police have confirmed that they know. So, why is she still free out here roaming the streets, doing Lord knows what, catfishing Lord knows who? It just does not make sense. Because even if you can't technically get her with this and this and this, she's lied to you all for 8 years. And not just you all, she's lied to the public. She has scammed the public time in and time out. I don't know how much you all know about this case, but it got so bad that at one point, Rudy's mom was going up to the morgue trying to identify dead bodies as if, oh, that body you found, it may belong to my son. That may be my son's body. Knowing that her son was in the other room. It's literally that bad, people. Rudy's mom was going to the morgue to identify other people's family members. Random dead young men. She's popping up at the morgue. It might be my son, Rudy. Knowing damn good and well that her son was right at her house. The woman flew all the way to California, pretending as if some kid who was found may have been her kid. Knowing damn good and well that Rudy is at the house and Rudy's okay. That's how far this woman has gone. And part of me wonders, like, if no one was there to establish that it wasn't her kid, would she just take one of these kids? Because over the years, they have found kids who were, messed up, who were really missing, who had really gone through some things. And she would come claim, oh, that might be my Rudy. It might be my Rudy. Please, everyone, pay for my plane ticket to fly across the country to see if this missing young man is my Rudy. Luckily, she's popped up in situations where family members already claimed their missing family member. I really wonder if she was capable of taking some young man out of the hospital pretending that it was her son. And I know that's wild to think, and you're probably thinking, no way someone would let her get away with that. No way Rudy's mom could walk out of the hospital or somewhere with someone else's missing kid. Well, look what she got away with for 8 years. It looks to me like people aren't doing their job and people don't give a damn. But Rudy's neighbors have been speaking out. You know, we got to hear a little bit from them during the press conference. One of the neighbors did a live stream on social media that I showed you. And in all reality, we're hearing from all of these people like Quadnell and stuff like that. I want to hear more from the neighbors, because I believe the neighbors probably have the most valuable insight on this entire situation, because they were hanging out with Rudy over the years. They were close to the home, and I really don't feel like we've heard enough from them. And, you know, I feel like they're losing focus. They're focused on all of these other things, but I think we need to kind of slow down. Let's all slow down. Let's take a deep breath. And let's really get to the bottom of what is going on here, because there are questions that people need to ask. There are minor details that have already come out that we really need people to elaborate on. But luckily, the neighbor talked to the news yesterday night. I want you all to watch this clip. Before you do, hit that thumbs up button. We are on the road to 100K. We could get there any day now. All I need is for you to hit the thumbs up button. Drop a comment down below. We're going to watch this clip. We're going to hear from this neighbor, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Is Keisha Ross. She's a neighbor of Rudy Farias. And Keisha, you say you never knew he was considered missing. So what was your understanding of the situation before these more recent details came to light?
Well, I had just moved back to Houston because I had been living in Fort Worth. I left in 2000 and I moved back here in 2022. And like 3 months after I moved here, I met the so-called Rudolph, because that's what I know him by. He told me his name was Rudolph, but he told me to call him Dolph for short. So that's what I knew him by. So he had been coming to my house since 3 months after I moved here, cleaning up until May 27th, when he actually so-called went missing from his home with his mother's BMW. He took it and he totaled it. And she told police that she didn't know who took her car, but she knew that he took her car because he was down here at my house earlier in the day with that car. And then he left. After he left, we hadn't talked to him. He turned his phone off, and we had been calling him to, because she had been calling us, asking us, have we heard from him? Have we talked to him? And we were saying no. So like Sunday, the day before the 4th of July, he come walking by my house earlier that morning around 6 or 6. It was like 7 o'clock. I want to say 7:30 or close to 8 o'clock. He had on some white basketball shorts, some flip-flops, no shirt, and he had some Band-Aids on him like he had went to the hospital or gave plasma or something, and a towel wrapped over him. And he walked to his house. And then later on that day, I learned that he was supposed to have been missing. And when I looked at the thing, my daughter pulled it up and it said he had been missing since 2015. I wasn't here in 2015, so I knew nothing about that because I watch the news every now and then. I don't watch it like that. So I never knew anything about that. That day, I discovered that he's supposed to have been missing since 2015. I say, how was he missing since 2015? And I met him in 2022. It's a bunch of people that's been in my home that knows him, and they're not even living with me anymore, but they can tell you that they know a Mexican guy named Dolph. And if you show them a picture of him, they'll tell you that's who they know, because that's who we know. She's saying we talked to her nephew. The number that we had for her so-called son is not his number. That was her nephew number. I told her all she have to do is bring her nephew to my presence and ask her nephew what's inside of my house. Dolph know because he's been inside of my house. And I told her they run around saying that this is her nephew that everybody has seen. Why isn't a lie detector test, or nobody has went into the home and took DNA evidence at the house? Because the boy had been living there since I've been at my home.
So what was your reaction when you heard Rudy was found slumped over outside of a church last week and then taken to the hospital? What went through your heart and your mind first?
He may have been slumped over due to being on some type of drug, because like I told people, every time I saw him, I never saw him with a sober mind. He was always saying that he needed some mushrooms or shrooms to get high, and he smoked marijuana, and he was always high. He was never sober. But when he would come, what was like getting to me was like, you could tell there was something wrong with him, because he was like always, he was like, if he came down here and she called his phone, he wouldn't answer. So that was one red flag.
Keisha, very quickly, we've got about 10 seconds left. What was your impression of his mother?
I thought she was a weird lady. I didn't talk to her. She would only talk to my son and my cousin, because I wouldn't talk to her, because I noticed some things about him that when his mom called, I thought she was some weirdo. Right. But when I met her, she gave me a different impression.
You know, I don't think the neighbors realized it at the time, and they maybe still don't realize it at this point. But in many ways, I think their home was like a sanctuary for Rudy. I could guarantee you that when Rudy would pop up at their house, it was because Rudy was probably trying to get away from his mom. You know, and even though he would go over there and chill and maybe talk and smoke a blunt or two or do this or do that, you know, that was probably Rudy's little getaway. The only little bit of peace that Rudy got away from his mom. And I hope they know that, you know, just being a person that welcomed him into their home and hung out with them, they probably, in many ways, maybe even saved this kid's life. Or at the very least, they provided him with a space where, even if it's just briefly, he could go to get away from the horrors that were at home. You know what I mean? Hearing that Rudy's mom would call him and he wouldn't answer, you know, he probably just wanted to get away and have that space for a little bit. But I also have questions, and I've been having these questions about what type of person is Rudy really? And I talked about it earlier in one of my videos, but it's like we've all been giving this understanding that Rudy is this young man with special needs, you know, that's kind of like special ed or something like that. But then we hear from the neighbors that, you know, he totes a strap. Rudy's got a gun. Rudy's hanging out, rolling up, smoking blunts, hanging out with the fellas. Rudy's riding around in his mom's car. There's questions that I have here. And don't get me wrong, I don't want you to think that I'm questioning Rudy. I'm just questioning what we know about Rudy. I don't think Rudy's to blame for any of this, so please don't take what I'm saying wrong. I just think it's important to know what Rudy was dealing with mentally to understand what's really going on here. Because if you have a young man who's of sound mind and his mother is doing these things to him, that's one thing. It's still bad, but that's one thing. But if you have a kid who is a special needs kid and the mom's taking advantage of them and doing things, that's like a whole different story. And I believe if Rudy's really special needs are something along those lines, then I feel like we can't look at the age the same way. Because I don't think a special needs person that's at the age of 25 is necessarily as developed as a regular 25-year-old man. So that's what I really wonder, like, how was Rudy really as a person? And, you know, what type of person is Rudy really? Also, you know, thinking about Rudy being strapped up, I don't know about the legalities of that. You know, I'm all for, you know, people having guns and stuff. Go ahead, knock yourself out. But I'm saying, like, are you allowed to get your special needs kid a firearm? I don't know if that's legal. You know, but I don't know. I don't know the law that well as far as that goes. It's never really something that I've had to think of or look into. But yeah, it's definitely, it's really a weird situation. And for the life of us, we cannot get a reporter on this story to ask the much needed questions. They got 10 seconds left, and they're like, well, what do you think of Janie? What do you think of Rudy's mom? Well, everyone already thinks that Rudy's mom is crazy. That's not a question that we need answered. We already answered those questions ourselves. You take one look at what this lady's been wrapped up in, you know that she's batshit crazy, period. So, oh, well, what type of person was Rudy's mom? No. Tell us the things that Rudy would talk to you about. You know, these reporters, they've dropped the ball just like the Houston Police Department, because there's been opportunities to ask hard-hitting questions that could really give us a better understanding of what's happening. But instead, it's just a generic, well, tell us about Rudy's mom. How was she? Like, we know she's weird. We know that. You know, and if you have all the time in the day, then yeah, ask that question. But if you got 10 seconds left to figure out what this lady could say, I mean, you could have thought of a better question, but this is what we're dealing with. And unfortunately, even though it seems like we're getting these press conferences, we're having people speak out, they're doing interviews on the news, I don't feel like any of our questions have really been answered that much. If anything, I feel like more questions are arising. And it almost feels already like people are all ready to move on. People are already ready to move on from the story onto other things. And, you know, we don't even know if the mom's going to get charges. We don't really know if Rudy's safe. Supposedly Rudy's safe. I'm not buying it. But now's the time to let me know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and I'll be talking to you all soon in the next video.